Greetings, Facebook Live community. There we go, that's me, our Christian Minson here. Rythmia Life Advancement Center, Guanacaste, Costa Rica. Coming to you today to talk about living a balanced life. How you doing out there? Get on, say hi. I'm waiting for people to come on. So if you're coming on this as a recording, if you're watching this as a recording, you can always skip to about 4 or 5 minutes in. That's where we begin to actually get into the content. Currently, we just say hi to anybody coming in. So if you're showing up, come say hi to me. Let me know where you're from, who you are, and all that good stuff. I am Christian Minson. I am hanging out here in Costa Rica. It's been the tail end of the rainy season. Jennifer Sodini, all right, coming on. First one to actually show up, even though there's a number of people on the live now. Gord Barrett, I wouldn't be able to do this unless Gord showed up. I think it's a contractual obligation at this point that every Facebook Live I do, Gord has to be there. Thanks for showing up there, Gord, so I could fulfill my contract. Who else is out there? I'm just hanging out. I'll tell you a few things. I was just in Switzerland last week with Greg Braden. Greg Braden was leading an event out in Switzerland, one of his programs, 4-day program. He's come here. He's coming here again, actually November 17th. He's been here at Rythmia before, and he loved the breath work, so he wanted to have breath work at some of his events. I've worked with him about 4 times now, delivering the breath work to a crowd of 250 people, 70 people, 360 people, and then at this Switzerland event, it was 230-ish people. Had an international crew with me to help out. Jason Cordhauer, how you doing? Good name so far. So far, everybody that I'm seeing on here is people who've been here before. I don't know why there's 35, 36 people on, but only 3 show up as join. So I don't know how Facebook works all that way, but say hi. Tell me where you're from. Tell me what's going on in your life as we wait for another minute and a half to get started. Talking today about living a balanced life, and I was just talking a little bit about my experience in Switzerland. Great, first time I've been to Switzerland. It's a beautiful place, as you can well imagine. Very green, very European looking, sort of German European, at least the area that I was in. Apparently it's divided into 4 language areas: French, German, Italian, and then some very specialized language, ancient language that only about 3% of the population speaks, but it's still one of their 4 national languages. And really great to be there. Great to get away sometimes from Rythmia just to take a break. Talking about balance, to have that balance, to go away, get refreshed, come back in, and get right back into it, and that's what we're doing this week. So that's why I wasn't on Facebook Live last week, if you were wondering. And since we got a good amount of people and we're coming upon the 5-minute mark, I'm going to get right into it. So welcome everybody to Facebook Live, Rythmia Life Advancement Center, Guanacaste, Costa Rica. This is the Breathwork edition led by myself, R. Christian Minson, Director of the Breathwork program here at Rythmia Life Advancement Center. Also Director of NovaCell now, the stem cell offering that we have here. If you're interested in that, message me privately and we can talk more. I'm a Breathwork Senior Trainer with the Transformational Breath Foundation for the last 12, almost 13 years. Former monk of 10 years, speaker and author, contributing author to this best-selling book, Align, Expand, and Succeed, Shifting the Paradigm of Entrepreneurial Success, the Merging of Consciousness and Business, get it exclusively at Rythmia. So when you come here, don't forget to take that book home with you. Internet coach and ultimately your catalyst for evolution and awakening. So welcome. I am here today speaking on the subject of living a balanced life. And so this is really about balance. What is balance? What does it mean when we talk about balance? How you can cultivate it, and all the ins and outs thereof. So, getting right into it. As always, why is this an important subject? Balance in life. When we talk about balance, it's important to understand that balance isn't like a perfect equilibrium where you just skirt through and everything stays in perfection. Balance is more like a sailboat trying to get to a destination. I use this analogy a lot, but if you want to go from here to there in a sailboat, generally you're not going to go in just a straight line, but you're going to tack this way because the wind is blowing you that way. Then you change your sails and you use that wind to take you back this way. But now you're off your course, so you tack back this way and that way and this way and that way until you get to your destination. So balance is really attacking between being in balance and being out of balance. Oftentimes our lives, I think I was just talking about Greg Braden. He had this great visual of chaos and order, and it's like he used this fractal design, and when it came to this one design that represented order, and so you saw that order happen, but as soon as it happened, the design shifted and changed and back into chaos again. And it went chaotic, and then all of a sudden order emerges, and there it is again. That order is, we could say, is the balance we're striving for. But as soon as it's gotten, it kind of moves again back into chaos. So we have to understand that balance is this delicate dance between being in balance and out of balance. And that's part of what we're talking about here. It's also important to consider balance because we want to consider what are the effects of being out of balance. And my spiritual teacher talked about the threefold suffering of mankind when we're out of balance in life, and that's physical disease, mental and emotional inharmonies, and ultimately spiritual ignorance. And those are, I'd say, the big three when it comes to what are really the consequences of being out of balance. But on a deeper, more visceral level or a more tangible level, being out of balance, it often comes with a lot of anxiousness or anxiety, a lot of tension, fear, and uncertainty. Often being out of balance really eats at your nerves and can burn out your nervous system. So you find that you get angrier easier. You get a little more agitated easily. You can be shorter with others. It can seriously damage or even ruin relationships when you're out of balance and you let that fester. Life starts ultimately killing you from within. So the ultimate result of being too far out of balance can be death. So there's a good reason to consider being in balance. So what is balance? Balance is really a consideration of the multiple dimensions of our being. And at a very basic level, and I talk about these a lot because this is really the foundation of a healthy life, is to recognize that we have a physical existence, which most people don't dispute. It's, our physical life is the very tangible life that we can see, feel, taste, touch. But then we have a mental and emotional dimension to our lives. If those areas aren't taken care of or aren't considered, it can have consequences even on that physical life. And then there's the spiritual dimension of our being, which I am going to say is probably the most important dimension of that being. So physical, mental, emotional, spiritual dimensions. We want to keep those. We want to recognize that those elements are part of a balanced life. And if we sacrifice any one of those elements for pursuit in the other, typically we'll pursue the physical existence and will often neglect the spiritual existence or the mental and emotional aspects of our being. Even if we're successful physically, we will feel out of balance. We'll feel unsuccessful at keeping that balance in life, and the net result will be inharmony and unhappiness, even if we're succeeding well in what we were trying to achieve. I mentioned I'm an internet coach, and in coaching out there's a wheel of balance that often coaches will use when first assessing clients, and that wheel can have a number. It's like a pie with a number of slices in the pie, and really it's helpful in assessing the balance of your life. And what are some of those segments? Of course, again, your spiritual path, your spiritual life. Then, of course, there's the financial aspect of life. That's an important facet. Then there's your relationship or your romantic life. Then there's a slice goes to your family, and another slice to your friends and your social life. Another slice, come over here, another slice is the fun, the recreation, just being able to blow off some steam. Then another slice is your physical wellness, exercising, right diet, all that kind of stuff. And then even another slice is your learning, your continued education, continuing to grow and evolve. So, and if you got any suggestions on what else is in that wheel, feel free to type them in. I do want to mention that this is an interactive sort of forum here, so you don't have to just listen to me, but feel free to type in questions, to type in comments. We're a little quiet on that front today. I don't know if it's something to do with that I just can't see what's going on, but it appears that not a lot of activity in the chat bar today, which so I invite you to ask and contribute. But those aspects: spiritual, financial, relationship, romance, family, friends, fun, exercise and physical health, and learning and education, they're all parts of a well-balanced life. All right? If any one of those parts is too far out of whack, then we're going to feel it. The analogy is, you look at that as it's a wheel, and if you see that some things are from center to the edge of the wheel, means fully in balance, and other things are less in balance, and then you look at that wheel and how rickety it is, and then you think about how that wheel would run if it actually looked that way, and you would definitely have a more or less rocky ride with a wheel that was shaped with a life out of balance. So we're really looking to bring all those things into more or less harmony so that the wheel stays around, even if that means that, say, one of those areas isn't fully expressed, but in scaling back that area, you're able to bring out other areas so the overall wheel is nice and harmonious. That's where you're going to find the most satisfaction and the most happiness in life. It's not from chasing one thing like our financial dreams to the nth degree, so we're way satisfied in that, but everything else has been compromised or neglected, and so now you go kaboom, 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 and that wheel doesn't flow very well. And in analogy, your life doesn't flow very well. And just look at out there in the world. This is probably the best example, because I'd say the most common out of balance scenario is that we go chasing our financial dreams. And why is that? Because we're taught to do that. We're taught that life, especially in America, the West, being number one, making that $1 million, getting that 6-figure income. You hear that all the time. Trying to improve your material existence is a noble endeavor, but when you put all your eggs in that basket, then you see all around you people who finally reach their goals and yet are still miserable. Jerry Powell, our CEO here, is a great example of that, and how Rythmia got started. He, more than most people out there, achieved financial success beyond our wildest dreams, and yet, attempted suicide a number of times because he was so miserable inside. And until he found, plant medicine to help him really gain a new perspective on what balance really means, all the financial success in the world didn't matter to his happiness. When he was enlightened and awakened through his plant medicine experiences, and then starting to live a more balanced life, he started to achieve happiness, then achieved Rythmia, which now is a environment for many people to find their happiness and their balance in life. And that this is the good news. Sometimes you got to go out of balance in order to rebalance. And again, that's that sailboat, right? One of the points of balance is to recognize being out of balance is just a turn away from directing yourself back towards balance. So when we talk about this, we want to recognize that the spiritual aspect of your being is probably of the utmost importance. And why do I say this? Because I really, being a monk for 10 years of my life, having done a lot of this plant medicine, breath work, getting in touch with what really is really real, what truth is at a universal level. I say this phrase a lot as well, but that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, not the other way around. We're not physical beings that have a temporary spiritual connection or whatever. At the core, we are spirit. We are spirit beings, and this physical reality is just a temporary part of our overall experience. So when you can reframe your life's experience in that manner, you can start to see that it's the spiritual aspect which is really the foundation. As my spiritual teacher would say, every problem that we have ultimately boils down to being a spiritual problem, a problem of spiritual ignorance, not realizing who we are, which is a spark of the divine, a little piece or a little fractal piece of God, of the divine energy. So we are as much of that energy, but when we forget it, then all hell breaks loose. So this is why it's so important to recognize that we ultimately are spiritual beings, and that is the foundation of who we are. Recognizing that foundation, then we can start to build a life of balance. If we have a faulty foundation, if we think we're physical beings primarily, we think we're emotional beings primarily, what have you, any other type, that foundation is going to be soft. That foundation is not going to be stable. And you're going to inherently have problems, even if you're trying to build a balanced life. If the foundation isn't solid, just like trying to build a skyscraper in the sand. If you don't find bedrock to anchor in the foundation, eventually you might build the most beautiful building in the whole wide world, but as soon as some kind of winds or waves of trials and tribulation come, that building's going to topple. And so is our life if we don't recognize that the foundation is ultimately that we are spiritual beings, and that is our primary pursuit here on this planet, to awaken to that realization, to start evolving towards greater expression of that spirit, which really is our greatest expression as a being, as a human, as a spirit, as anything. The more we strive to express our unique potential, it's going to show up physically, emotionally, spiritually, all that. But it ultimately is a spiritual endeavor. So that's a main point we want to get across. Now, stages for getting back into balance, I've often talked about, and I've talked about in various Facebook Lives. There's essentially 3 stages to, when I talk about breath work, I talk about 3 stages that we go through. I really realize that these are 3 stages for bringing our life back into balance. And those are coping, healing, and thriving. Right? Coping, healing, thriving. What do I mean by that? Coping, that's the first stage. When you recognize that you're out of balance, imagine that you are in an ocean and without a life preserver, and your head keeps going underwater. Well, coping is the immediate need to keep your head above water. So that's the same whether it's that physical, keeping your head above the ocean water, or metaphorically in life, keeping your head above water, just being able to get through the day without crashing, without burning, without going into panic or anxiety or nervous breakdown. So we have to learn how to cope first. Once we've coped, once we've gotten relatively stable, so it's like somebody threw you a life preserver, now you have to look at healing. Healing is a stage then at going back into your past and start to uproot the causes of what caused you to cope in the first place. So in this case, maybe in the case of being in the water, now you see that the boat you were in, you start to examine the fact that you probably should have inspected it before, and for any holes, any leaks, or that the engine was in good shape and wouldn't conk out on you, or the sails were not rotten and eaten through by moths and otherwise. So here you are, you're looking back at your life, the kinds of things that caused the buildup to where you now were in need of coping. And so this is really what often breath work and the program here at Rythmia is all about. It helps you, especially at this phase of the game, is to go back and really, through the use of plant medicine, through the use of breath work, uncovering those aspects of our being that we've been hiding from or we've been suppressing, so that we can start to heal them. We bring them to the surface, and we allow that energy to integrate. We allow ourselves to deal with it so productively, so that we can move forward in our life, which takes us to the third stage of balance, the third stage of this process, which is thriving. So thriving is when we're able to cope. We got our head above water. We're healing. We've healed a lot of our past. We've looked at the past. We've dredged it up. We've managed it. We've worked with it. We've done whatever we need so that is in balance. Now, thriving is really the ultimate aspect of balance, where we really accept our role as divine beings, and we learn how to express that divinity more and more. So we're not just coping, healed beings that now just wander the earth in a relative state of blandness, but we recognize that in this state now, that we are actually much more than we considered ourselves to be previously. And now this is really the stage of striving to express that potential, express that divinity in as much effulgence as possible. So that's kind of the 3 stages then of balance: coping, healing, and thriving. Makes sense? If you got any questions on that, again, let me know. I'm kind of wondering, I usually don't. Usually there's at least somebody commenting on something. Somebody, Gord, hey, why don't you type something just so I know if I'm out, if you guys are live out there or not. Let me know. So, we talked about why it's important to be in balance, because if not, we can end up feeling anxiousness, feeling fear, tension, disease, death, all that kind of stuff. On the converse side, when we are imbalanced, you can recognize that your life is imbalanced because really there's an overriding sense of peace, of joy, just good, harmonious feelings. What I would say, probably the ultimate hallmark of a balanced life is resilience. What do I mean by that? Resilience, meaning that you are able to handle anything that comes your way, because in balance, you're able to put in perspective. It's almost like a puzzle. You can say, all right, this big thing that's coming at me actually fits right there, and it's okay. It's actually not that big. It's just one piece in a grander scheme of things. When you're out of balance, any kind of problem, any kind of challenge, any kind of thing ultimately takes up your whole consciousness. It seems like it is the essence of life at that point, that life is this big problem. And not only that, it's a consistent train of problems that keep coming your way. But when your life is imbalanced, you have this resilience. You feel that energy, and you're like, okay, I can deal with this. It's a small piece of the greater essence of who I am. And this is happening over here. All right. So I can roll with the punches. That's, it's that resilience that is the effect of balance. I've used the example of a man named Viktor Frankl and the book Man's Search for Meaning many times in many ways. And I'll use it here as well as a great example of somebody who's achieved that balance because and the resilience and the peace of mind that comes from that, because he recognized that ultimately life is a mental game in our control. That you're not dictated by the circumstances of life, but how you respond or react to the circumstances of life is completely up to you. The circumstances don't dictate your happiness. Your happiness dictates your happiness. In other words, Viktor Frankl was a survivor of Auschwitz, the concentration camp in World War II. And essentially 1 in 20 people made it through there. And he made it through basically because he made a choice not to see himself as a victim like he could have rightly done. Indeed, everybody that was impounded there was a victim on some level, but those who accepted their victimhood, usually that led them right to the grave. Viktor Frankl instead recognized that his survival was dependent on how he responded to his situation. And instead of being dejected and disillusioned, why did this happen to me? This shouldn't have happened. It's not right. It's not fair. And of course, all that is true in a lot of ways, but that kind of thinking took most people down to the grave. So he instead decided, I have a choice in every moment, every day, to live with peace in my heart, to live with a smile on my face, to live in forgiveness of my enemies, or I have a choice to do exactly the opposite. He looked around and he sees everybody doing the opposite and what kind of fate befell them, and he chose the other way. He said, by choosing this other way gives me the most resilience, the most opportunity to survive this otherwise ultimately heinous environment. And that really, to me, anytime I get a little disillusioned about where I'm at, or, oh, this shouldn't happen to me, or why did I get so much more work, or why did this person do this to me, or whatever, I think of Viktor Frankl in this, and I think, if somebody could actually transform such an environment of darkness and make it through, then anything that I'm going through is peanuts in comparison. So consider that. So here we are. There's a good explanation of what balance is, a little bit of the, once we actually are in balance, some of the motivating factors to be in balance, to be, feeling more peaceful, feeling more joyous, feeling more on point, feeling that resilience that is our nature. How do we do this? How do we, what are some of the steps to really getting into balance? And I'd say the first step is something I mentioned earlier, and that's really to prioritize your spiritual life first. To recognize, once again, that you're a spirit being having a physical and emotional experience, that primarily you're spirit. So to recognize that above all else, that takes precedent. In the business world, they often say, once you earn some money, you got a lot of bills to pay, a lot of obligations to fulfill. They say always pay yourself first, right? Because if you don't, you put out all your money to all this stuff and there's nothing left at the end. You pay yourself first, somehow you manage to take care of all your obligations, and you still got something left to continue to build. So in a way to prioritize your spirit is to pay yourself first, to be to recognize that you're building that foundation that everything else is going to build on by keeping that spiritual life first. Which and what does it mean to keep your spiritual life first? I consistently refer to what I call the 5 habits of highly spiritual people. And interestingly, these habits I came up with, from my experience of being a monk for 10 years in my life, living a deep spiritual existence day in and day out, and having these habits, these 5 habits, daily habits that really define the spiritual life. And interestingly enough, I was just reading through the lesson study program from my spiritual teacher, and lo and behold, in there he outlines these actual 5 things in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so I don't know if I found that somewhere long ago and then it's been in the background of my mind, but really these were the 5 things that we lived each day. So we were living those points that he outlined so astutely, and that is, meditating, introspecting, serving others, studying, and physical exercise. Those are the 5 habits. So these could easily as well be called the 5 habits of balanced living, because if you work these 5 things into your life, you are creating the foundation for balance, but you're also building on that foundation. So, the ones I like to focus on here is introspecting. Introspect in your life. What is out of balance? Take time to do that wheel, right? And see, well, I'm pretty good at making money, but I'm really bad at spending time with my family. Or I'm really good at, having fun and adventures, but I'm really poor at taking care of myself physically and making sure my physical health is good. And really introspecting, so you've got to lay of the land. You've got a map of where you need to go, what's good, what's high, what needs some shoring up, and what needs to be in balance, so that you can make a game plan then, and then make that plan how you're going to build up these aspects of your being and start to devote time to that. Another one is serving others. Part of part of balance is really recognizing that it's not all about us, even though you are the most important thing to you, and it's not a bad thing, but it can be a little out of control if we just continuously focus this way. That when we start to focus on serving others, oftentimes that gives us a greater perspective. It helps us get out of our myopic viewpoint of life and helps us to achieve a little more balance. So recognizing that serving others is one of those vitally important aspects to bring more balance into your life. Oftentimes that shores up the different aspects, like the family part of the wheel, the friendship part of the wheel, the community part of the wheel. Those different aspects that require interaction with other people. Oftentimes, by taking on a spirit of service and trying to serve others, we bring those aspects into balance. Of course, the physical exercise, which is one of the 5 spiritual habits, also takes care of that physical health aspect of our wheel of balance, right? That's vitally important. Almost next to your spiritual life would be your physical life, your physical health, right? Because without physical health, it's very hard even to meditate and achieve your spiritual goals. But without your physical health, you can have all the money in the world and you're not going to enjoy it. You could have all the love and friends in the world, but you're compromising your ability to interact with them. So it's vital that you keep just under your spiritual health, your physical health alive, and then your financial health is right there close to the top too. That there is a balance. There's been studies that show how much money can you make? Does making more money create more happiness in your life? And the answer is yes and no. Actually, in the study, it shows that people who continue to make more money up to, I forget what the amount was, but somewhere between, say, $150,000 and $250,000. So up to that point, making more money actually does increase your happiness. And why is that? Because if you're making $35,000 a year, you have to cut corners. You don't, some of the necessities of life actually have to become options to life and such. So the more money you're making, you're giving yourself a little bit more freedom and stability. But then it showed after that point, about $250,000, the more money people make, actually the less happy they start becoming. And why is that? Because at that point, there's enough money to take care of the actual needs of life, an ample amount to take care of the actual needs. Now the excess money is just going towards wants. And the more we start to develop wants that are independent from actual needs, we can start getting into problems, because those desires can start leading us to chase things, to start chasing material pleasures and things that have nothing to do with our true happiness. And that can throw us out of balance. Also, as we start making more money, we have to start worrying about that money. All of a sudden, now I've got to protect that money. Somebody's going to try and steal it from me or otherwise. And that adds its own level of anxiety and stress to the whole point. So financial health is important to a point, and recognize that's the perfect point to say, all right, that's in perfect balance. Let's bring these other things now into balance. Of course, meditation is the foundation of the spiritual life, and that's the primary activity that you can do in order to develop your spiritual life. If any of these things, if you could only do one of these 5 habits, I would recommend doing the meditation. But at least you're continually reconnecting with the spirit of who you are and that's going to help guide you, even if you can't do these other 4 habits. So continuing on how we develop balance, another way is to start developing your willpower. Your willpower is vital in life and happiness, because things don't just happen. Things that you want out of life don't just happen for you. Now, some things might, and you might think, oh, life can just come to me. But we actually have to take initiative. We actually have to put energy in motion in order to get and receive different things in life. And that energy in motion is really our willpower. And if you don't, you might see the wheel is out of balance, and here you need to shore things up. So you really want to, you really have the desire, but if you don't have the will, if you don't have the, put the action behind it, then you're no better off knowing that information than if you didn't know that information. Part of developing that willpower is to keep the right company. Recognize that who you hang out with and what your environment is vital to the expression of your will and the expression of your balance. As my spiritual teacher would say, environment is stronger than willpower. And what he meant by that was that the more you stay in a certain environment, the more you're going to be influenced by that environment. Let's take Rythmia, for example. Rythmia is a place of where plant medicine is done, right? Plant medicine is a primary tool here at Rythmia for working working out your introspection and getting your life in balance. So prior to being here, I've had experience with plant medicine, but I didn't, I wasn't a regular participant in it. But here it is. It's in this environment. It's appreciated in this environment. It's respected in this environment. And so eventually, I have taken on that aspect of part of my path is to use the plant medicine to help me in this, in my continued evolution and flow. So, that's an example basically of how environment is stronger than willpower. Maybe not, let's use more of a negative example. If you are in if you don't drink coffee or you don't smoke cigarettes, but you're in an office where everybody else drinks coffee, everybody else smokes at every break, you're the only one sitting around there every single break. You're the only one without coffee in your hand, without a cigarette in your hand. And eventually, probably you're going to take a sip of coffee or you're going to take a puff of a cigarette, and then the ball starts rolling. That environment influences you. So basically what we're saying is really choose your environment. Choose your environment well. Choose your companions well. If they're not supporting your balance, don't be afraid to let them go. Don't be afraid to change the environment of that companions. And then, I'd say the biggest tools for achieving balance are, in my opinion, always breath work. Breath work is such a powerful tool for helping you in those 3 stages to cope, to get you to get your head above water, to heal, to start to dredge up these old energies, bring them to the surface so we can finally purge them, expunge them from your being so that you can be a clear slate for then thriving, then to circulate your life force energy to give you that willpower, to give you that enthusiasm, to move forward in life and really claim your divinity and express the full nature of who you are. So breath work is huge in that. And you can do breath work here at Rythmia. And it's the Rythmia program as well that is huge for bringing people's lives into balance. So many people come here. I'd say by and large, the majority of people come here because their life is out of balance. Now it may be out of balance because they've lost loved ones, out of balance because they've been addicted to something, out of balance because they're just in emotional shambles. Whatever it is, this program helps them to take a good hard look at this energy and show me who I become, essentially, to release that energy and accept who you truly are, which is merge me back with my soul, and ultimately get a new sense of harmony and love for their life and the elements of their life, which is to heal my heart. And these are the 3 cornerstones of Rythmia. Show me who I become, merge me back with my soul at all costs, and heal my heart. And this is what happens here every week as 80 plus people come through. They're by and large getting these experiences and bringing their lives back into balance, reaching that balance. And now the real task is to go back into the world and maintain that balance, right? And remember, maintaining that balance isn't staying in that straight line. It's like the sailboat, drifting off balance and tacking back on, and drifting off balance and tacking back on, drifting off. And so never beat yourself up for being a little out of balance. And as some very astute individual said, live life in moderation, right? And that includes moderation. So sometimes even moderation is thrown out the window in achieving balance. Sometimes we just have to go wild. Sometimes we have to go crazy, and that's okay. All right, so that's the tacking of the sailboat. So breathwork, the Rythmia program, keeping right companions, developing your willpower, maintaining those 5 habits of highly spiritual people. These are all ways to keep you in that balance. And so, I'll leave you, if I don't see anybody. I've seen a lot of people show up today, but I still haven't seen anybody typing anything in. So if you have been, I'm sorry that I have no record of that and able to respond otherwise. If you haven't, that's fine. We'll leave it at that. But I want to leave you with a thought. What if you made the effort to live a balanced life? What if you followed these habits, you introspected and you figured out your wheel, you shored up, you figure out where you need to make efforts, you make those efforts, you start to shore things up. Imagine how the things that currently bother you now would just roll off your back, as they say, like water off a duck, or like mud off a lotus leaf. Right? Imagine how beautiful your daily experiences of your life could be, and just keep that image in mind no matter what comes up in your life. See how much more satisfying your experience of life can be as a result. And that's really, again, what we're talking about. When we're talking about balance, we're talking about really bringing life into harmony, life into a state of perpetual peace and joy, and to give you that resilience that allows you to, like we said, let the water of your trials and tribulations just roll off your back like that of a duck. So with that, we're pretty good. We're coming up on the top of the hour here, using up our time well. I'm R. Christian Minson, talking to you today about living a balanced life. Hopefully these points have hit home for you. If you want to carry on the conversation, continue with me, or you got any questions, or you just want to be my friend on Facebook, feel free to reach out. I'm R. Christian Minson, the letter R. Christian Minson on Facebook, also on Instagram. I think I'm Christian_Minson, YouTube, R. Christian Minson. Friend me, click on my links, all that kind of stuff. But if you do, always include a message, all right? A message that gives me some kind of context for relating to you, all right? People who just friend me without any context, even if you were here at Rythmia last week, don't expect that I remember the context, all right? Give me the context. I saw you on Facebook Live. I thought that was really cool on balance. I got a question here, or whatever, or I just want to continue to be abreast of what's going on in your life and work. give me that context, and then you will be prioritized as far as accepting you in the friends list. And then we can carry on this conversation. Of course, see me every Thursday, every Friday here on Facebook Live, and then these get archived in the Rythmia YouTube channel, the Rythmia Facebook videos. So you can find a lot of these different things. I'd say look up the 5 Habits of Highly Spiritual People. I think I've got a Facebook Live of that specific title. That plays into this topic this week very much. So with that, still no questions that I can see. I am going to sign off for now. Our Christian Minson saying namaste. And until next week, I hope you can live a balanced and satisfied life. Till then, over and out.